Hello and welcome to NOV Live International. I'm Michael Gaines, host of the podcast NOV Today, and glad that you're joining us here on our fourth day of coverage as we've been speaking to technology experts from across the industry on tech across the industry. So we are looking at really having a great conversation today as we tackle the topic of early production facilities and bring in our expert to shed some light on that area and also talk about what we can expect moving forward. So it's going to be a great conversation. Before we get to our expert today, we're going to go ahead and bring in Shelby Dumaine, who's NOV's social media manager, to talk to us about how you can be a part of today's conversation. Hey, Shelby.
Good morning, Michael. I'm so excited. It's day 4 here at NOV Live International, and we have a really great lineup today. So you at home watching, if you want to join the discussions throughout the day for any of our experts, you can comment your questions down below, whether you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. Go ahead and give us all your questions. I'm live in the comments throughout the show, and we're going to get to as many as we possibly can.
All right. Thanks, Shelby. Yeah, looking forward to those questions and comments as the show rolls on. So today we're going to be talking about early production facilities and what that is and how NOV sees that part of the area and the energy value chain. So to help us understand more about this specific area, we have our expert Rune Fantoft, who is the Senior Vice President for Wellstream Processing. So Rune, hello and thanks for joining us.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. So I know that, again, one of the great things about the energy space is that there's a lot to cover and learn about. And so there might be some that aren't as familiar with early production facilities. So would you mind just taking a bit of time here at the top of the conversation and just lay the foundation for us? What is a early production facility?
Yeah, I'll give a quick explanation. And early production facility is a term that is probably used more and more. It's as you can hear from the word, it's about producing early from a field. And I'll explain a little bit why are someone doing that, and then why is there an increased focus on that, and what is really required in order to make an early production facilities, and what we do for that in order to enable that kind of developments. So if you look at the early production facilities, like we have some illustration here to just give some updates. So normally when an oil and gas field or oil or gas field is being produced, it's all about developing a field, and it's about producing from the field. For the owner or the operator of the field, there's always a challenging stage, which is where they spend money in order to make money at a later stage. So that's why we see on the cash flow or investment level, there's a period of time from the field is identified, discovered, and it's developed, where money is being spent. And then at a later stage is where oil and gas are being produced, and that's where the money is being made. What we see on the early production facility is that, like, how can we get this return as quickly as possible? There are many things we can do on the production facility in the starting place, but for early production facility, it's all about finding ways that you can produce early from the field, and normally has it's more a limited type of infrastructure. Just get the cash flow coming in the right way for the owner by installing an early production facility. And by doing that, there are multiple things that you achieve from it, in addition to getting a positive cash flow earlier than what you would do from a normal facility. Is also very often used to get some experience early on from the field. Very often the field is being developed based on some samples or some testing of wells from the reservoir. And very often that is associated with high uncertainties. And of course, with an oil production facility, you get the real production experience from the field that is also enabling you to develop the final infrastructure of the field in a more accurate and optimal way to get the most out of the field. So that is really the perspective of from the operator. So then going back, like there is some hardware involved in this, like there's some real tangible things that are part of it. So we go to the next illustration. This is really what is being done both on an early production facility, but also on a normal production facility. So what we are involved in is related to how to enable the production of the oil and gas, which is also coming with water and sand. And then there is a certain number of stages. A separation of the oil, gas, water, sand, is a treatment of gas, is a treatment of oil or condensate, or a treatment of produced water, is handling of sand. And these are normally the main steps in an early production facility. If you look at the complete production facility, that needs to cover all aspects of the plant field and potentially also future tie-ins to that field. So normally a production facility has a lot of steps, a lot of optimization in there, a lot of flexibility to be able to cover all different aspects of the field lifetime. Of course, there might be changes to that during the field lifetime, but it really is a much more complex system. So an early production facility, normally when you start producing from a field, it is it has a more limited variations in flow rates. You're not necessarily maximizing the production from the field, so you make certain decisions to make that early production facility a defined, limited complexity, so that you can deliver it quickly and you can start producing early. You can start producing it several years in some cases before you would then have a full facility. And in some cases, that might be a plan, part of the plan, that the early production facility will be one that is there for a long time. In certain type parts, it will be something that is just supposed to be there for a limited period of time. In some cases, the early production facility will be converted into be a part of the final process. But for us, and this is where we are getting involved in this, is like we are the expert in processing, treatment, separations for oil, gas, water, and sand. And that is really our what we are doing in this space. So what we are providing is this treatment steps, and by the fact that an early production facility is a fairly defined scope for processing. This is something that we have the experience on, both deliver equipment into for these kind of facilities, but also deliver complete modules into these facilities. And we are also involved in activities where we might, like we will deliver together with partners for construction, that to actually deliver the complete facility, like as a processing unit, as we would do, but and all the construction work, everything, basically make an early production facility available for the operator, and also getting involved in the operation of it.
Right. Yeah. No. And that's a great graphic to illustrate in what the facility, early production facility is. And so it kind of begs the question for me, in thinking through it. Have you seen an increase in interest in developing early production facilities from the market? Because obviously that's where the real driver is going to be coming from. So if you have, why have you seen that interest?
Well, we see increased interest, and of course we see increased interest because we are more involved in this today than before. But we also see an increased interest by the operators, field owners, that this is a way to go. We all know that cash is king for everyone, especially for an owner of an oil and gas field, because there's such a heavy investment involved in it. So with the increased focus on cash flows for everybody involved, early production facility has a major impact to that, enabling oil and gas being produced early, especially oil, getting the quick return. Also to fund the further development of the field and quick payback times is really the big driver, and that's why we see, like we've seen several market surveys done by those who are experts in the field, that a more number of operators are looking into this, and we think this is something that we'll see more and more of in many areas of the world.
Mm-hmm. So I know that we talked about the fact, and you mentioned that from an early production facility standpoint, NOV is well positioned to be able to provide that solution. I just wanted to see if you could maybe talk a little bit more about why you feel that way and why that's the case.
Yeah, so an early production facility is a more defined scope, a more defined, and in many cases, a simpler overall processing system than a complete production facility. And I'm not saying that we can only handle things that are simple, but there are established EPC type companies that are expert on developing very large production facilities, and we work very close with them. They are some of our most important customers, where we provide equipment system or subsystem, I would say, modules as like processing equipment into these complete production facilities. These complete production facilities that are supposed to be there for many years, a lot of flexibilities, has a lot of infrastructure. They have a lot of engineering required to make the complete facility. It has a lot of complexity, and that there are companies that are expert in that, and they are our friends. Like that, we work with them as a supplier. We have the expertise in the separation and the treatment and other things related to the fluid handlings of these kind of facilities, and we provide that solutions into it. But when it comes to an early production facility, it's really becoming like a module or two of processing equipment, and we are expert on delivering process module and equipment, so we can take that complete responsibility. It's not that heavy on the engineering and infrastructure side. That enables a company that NOV that are experts on the product and the technology, the solution, how to operate it. We are an ideal partner for that, and you also get an advantage by the fact that we have the products. One very important aspect is that an early production facility, the nature of it needs to be delivered quickly, and it needs to understand what it really needs to do in order to provide the processing step in a fairly simple system. And by being expert on the processing side, we have control of the products, we have control of the supply chain in that way, that we can turn around quickly and provide this quick, and we can provide a complete facility. We have control of that. So in that way, I believe that we are an ideal partner to those who want to develop a field with an early production facility. Right. At the same time, we will work with a larger type of field development with the EPC companies to provide equipment into those processes as well, and we are happy to combine that when that is an opportunity as well.
Right. So for those that just joined us, we're talking with Rune Fantoft, who is the Senior Vice President for Wellstream Processing, and we're talking about early production facilities, taking your questions for Rune, as well as talking about different technology approaches and solutions that NOV is taking in that space. So if you have a question about anything early production facility related, feel free to put that in the comments section on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook, and we will look to get to your questions. All right, Rune, I want to maybe circle around and talk about the idea of advantages, especially, looking at NOV. We have a lot of different technologies and approaches. So can you talk about some of the advantages of being a technology solution provider when you're looking at the delivery of an early production facility? I know we talked about it a little bit, but just wanted to maybe drive that message home, because I think you have perspective on what it looks like when you don't necessarily have the capabilities and synergies similar to what NOV has.
Yeah. So I think it's a few things. We talked a little bit about it already, but one thing is that the time and the fact that when you all have control of the products into it, it's really enable you to be an efficient supplier in time, because we control that supply chain well, which is one of our advantages also in the normal production systems when we are delivering into that. But this is really a key part. But also the fact that, like, everybody wants like cost. One thing is like the purpose of the early production facility, really from a financial point of view, is to get a quick return. And in order to get a quick return and a maximum return, it's also about making this in a cost-efficient way. And cost-efficient is something that we're contributing with here, because the more layers of companies involved in the development of any project, the more cost there will be. In a large-scale EPC project for a complete facility, like, there needs to be several layers because there are several expertise that are required to make a very complex project. But the fact that NOV can both take the responsibility of being a contracting company for a facility like an early production facility and have all the technology and products ourselves is putting us in a position where we can make this in a very cost-efficient way. And also the fact that with services and digitalization and the way we can support operation of the field, we can provide all the expertise that is required for this facility, which make things cost efficient, to make it quick, and we also can make and support the owners of the field to make the right decisions. What is the possibility of producing quickly from the field? What is needed? What kind of oil treatment is needed in order to do this, for instance? Just an example from a processing point of view. So we can be that kind of partner. If you would go to a traditional engineering company, which do a great job in many areas, but the early production facility becomes very quickly a very small project that becomes, if you have too many levels involved in it, then it might not be as efficient as what we can provide as a turnkey for an early production facilities. While other technology companies that we are normally competing with for many production facility equipment deliveries, they don't have the size and the solid, being as solid and having all the capabilities in order to provide a complete early production facility. So in that way, like NOV with its strength and at the same time NOV with the product and technology capabilities, I think we are ideally positioned in order to make and being a partner to anyone when it comes to early production facilities.
So let's talk about the idea of an early production facility in terms of how you view it. So, on one side, someone might have the question, well, is this something that is only applicable for maybe a complete new field development? Or maybe on the other side, the question would be, well, could this be something that could be used in maybe an existing facility to help with capacity or things like that? How do we normally look at that?
Yeah, so it has multiple opportunities. Like when you hear the word early production facility, you really hear it. At least I hear it as something that is related to develop of a new field. You don't have any infrastructure, and you can put in an early production facility to start selling some oil very quickly. That's a new field. But at the same time, like, we are very much involved in brownfield opportunities where there is a facility that is there, and they want to tie in new fields, new parts of the field, but the existing facility doesn't have the capacity. So very often we are involved in upgrading existing facilities, but very often that is not enough if the changes to the facility is not big enough. So the same applies really to decisions when it comes to upgrading, expansion in many cases, that instead of like making normally when you do that kind of expansions, tie in new fields and things like that, you will try to upgrade existing equipment, add in maybe some equipment into existing one, but sometimes that's not enough. But you don't really want to make like a big change of existing facility, make a new train of an oil processing or something like that. And this is where an early production facility type project can be delivered in the same way. That can be a standalone module or something like that is in between the field and a further downstream complete processing facility that was there in the first place. So you can enable tie-in, you can enable production from new fields into existing infrastructure by applying the same principle. The graph that I showed before is going to look a little bit different, but in principle, we're talking about the same thing. We're talking about the same kind of deliveries, and I think that is so it has as many approaches now, and we have that kind of discussions with customers. Sometimes we call it early production facility because that's what it is. Sometimes it has a different name, but it's the same type of delivery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and that makes sense. So, when you look at the types of projects that you're going to be approaching with the early production facility, do you also consider the idea that you could see potentially broader uses, maybe later in the field life? And if so, what's important to consider when you're looking for a broader use or use case?
Yeah, in some cases, the key is just to get early production. It's all about how can we get something on the field as quickly as possible to get some money from the field quickly. But that is not necessarily the only scenario, and to be cost efficient from a complete lifetime of a field point of view, you might think that there are certain steps that you put into an early production facility that's still going to be there when the field is further developed. So you start having the early production facility with some functions in terms of enabling the first processing, and then you add capacity, you add the features that can handle the complete production through the lifetime of the field. So it might happen that or it might not happen. Like it happens that early production facilities might be a part of a permanent facility. And it also might happen that in certain cases you might reuse an early production facilities for another location. So it's not like an early production facility is always made for something to be used in 2-3 years and then just scrapped. Like it in many cases it has a very meaningful lifetime for multiple purposes, as I mentioned.
All right. So one of the questions that I think could be posed would be around the space of really understanding taking on the scope of a project or an early production facility development. And of course, we already talked about the advantages that the NOV has in terms of product breadth and capabilities, but wanted to maybe talk about this project scope and what that would look like as we come into the picture versus maybe a traditional production facility or another entity that might take on more of a normal scope.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Yeah. So basically, I mean, could NOV, like a company like NOV, for instance, could we take on a larger scope and role in the development of an early production facility, versus a normal one?
Yeah, no, I get it now. So yes, because like we are a technology product deliver modules systems for processing equipment. That's where we're coming from. At the same time, NOV is one of the larger and most solid oil field service companies. So we try to, if you combine that, we don't have the engineering or desire to have the engineering capacity in order to be and the field development capacity to be like an EPC company for a complete production facility. They are our customers and partners that we work closely with on many projects. But for an early production facility, we can take that full scope because we have control of enough engineering and the supply chain, and we partner with traditional EPC companies. We partner with construction companies in order to be able to be the company responsible for delivering the complete facility. So we have examples where we have a partner up with in certain countries where there are contracting companies that are very good at making facilities in that country, and but they cannot provide all the processing equipment. They cannot provide the complete like in order to provide the oil and gas that the customer wants. So combining that in this way. It does not makes the same sense from financial point of view to work on a more traditional, like you have someone that is doing the development with in terms of system engineering or like as a traditional EPC, and then procuring components like from a product supplier, because that's going to eventually be a fairly time-consuming, expensive model for this type of facilities. And that's where like the fact that we can partner up with the right partner and being the responsible party we're able to make a more cost-efficient, fit for purpose in this case, and an efficient extrusion model that is right for an early production facility, since due to the less complexity of the overall system.
Okay. Well, this has been really insightful. I think we've got some questions that people have started to put in the chat. And so if you just joined us in the last few minutes, we're talking with Rune Fantoft, who is the Vice President for Wellstream Processing. And we're talking about early production facilities and the concepts and approaches in that area. So Rune will be taking your questions, and to help kick us off, we're going to go ahead and bring in Shelby Dumaine, NOV's social media manager, who's in the comment section getting those questions for Rune. So, hey, Shelby.
Hey, Michael. Yeah, so this first question comes from YouTube. What is the normal capacity and investment of a typical early production facility?
I would say that could be anything. So like, it's very difficult to answer. Like, we've been involved in an early production facility that includes one separator, and that's it, because it has the opportunity to provide some oil to an existing facilities. Then we might talk about a typical project scope, like within a few $1 million. Well, we have been involved in discussions around projects that are almost 1,000 times larger in value than that. So like, it's difficult to say. It's ranged from fairly small to still very big, because even if we can talking about $1 billion project, $2 billion project, whatever number it is, like, that's a large number for many people. But at the same time, if you look at this being a very large field, it's not necessarily a very expensive solution compared to alternatives for that field.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I think we've got some additional questions rolling in. So we'll keep Shelby coming on in. So what other questions do we have, Shelby?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we got a couple on LinkedIn. One of them, Guillaume, asked, they would like to know a little bit more about the technology actually deployed at the facilities.
Yeah, so in terms of processing, you can, if you had a chance, you can put in one of the slides that shows the technology. But like, it's the same kind of technology as you would see in the production facility. It's just that you might not necessarily have the complete steps, all the complexity and all the flexibility that you would need. Very often, more or less all the time, there are separation, like the oil, gas, water separation. And then very often there is a treatment of that oil onto to get it to the level where it can be exported and sold, because that's the whole purpose of the facility. Sometimes there includes produced water treatment. There is some level of water treatment that normally involved, but like, might not necessarily be on a very high capacity unless there are significant water production rate already in the beginning of the field lifetime. Very often the water is coming later on. So very often the water treatment steps are simpler. But in some cases, it's expected to produce a lot of water from day one. And we have looked at systems that has very advanced produced water treatment as part of an early production facilities, all the way down to getting down to the low ppm levels of oil and water. Gas processing, sometimes there includes, it depends on what is what's the purpose of the gas? Is that also going to be sold, or is it going to find another way to handle the gas? If it's going to be exported, then you need to have certain processing step, especially on the stabilization and the dehydration of the gas. If there includes CO2, H2S, and that kind of thing, that needs to be handled. So all these kind of steps is normally included, but especially on the gas side, on the water side, it's very much up to how much water and how much treatment of the gas is really what the owner of the field wants to do and needs to do with the conditions of the wells during that limited lifetime that often an early production facility is considered for, and that like the more full processing of it will come later on, and when you have the complete facility.
Okay. All right. So I know that we are slowly coming up on the bottom of the hour, and this has been a really good conversation about early production facility technology approaches and philosophy, especially from NOV. I think we have one more question regarding some of the type of equipment that we provide in an early production facility. So we'll bring Shelby in to see if we can get that last question here in for you, Rune.
Sure. So this comes from Pranay on Facebook, and they're wondering, is NOV involved in providing equipment for an early production facility, such as 2-3 phase separators, heater treaters, pumps, etc.?
Yeah, that's what we do, and we have been involved in early production facilities with other taking the lead on the overall contracting of it, and we delivered, like in some cases, separation, including electrostatic treatment, heater treaters. We provide pumps into it. So in like all equipment, like I wouldn't say all, because sometimes we subcontract as well, but a lot of the equipment, processing equipment, flow equipment that they required for a early production facility, we can provide as components. We do that, and we do that to the main production facility as well. And we can provide a complete package and complete early production facility as facility. It depends on where it is and who the customer and who are involved in the project. We go from the small scope to the large scope.
Great. Well, Rune, I really appreciate your insight and sharing your expertise here as we talked about early production facilities. I know that as is always the case, we get questions that come in right as we end our conversation. So if you are one that just put a question in that we weren't able to get to, or if you're watching this after our live conversation and have a question for Rune, I'm sure that he and his team will be more than happy to get in touch with you, and you can get in touch with him by sending an email. We'll put that on the screen. So it's rune.fantoft, that's FANTOFT @NOV.com. And I'm sure Rune will be more than happy to contact you. So Rune Fantoft, the senior vice president for Wellstream processing at NOV, talking about early production facilities. So Rune, thanks for your time today.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for joining us today as we continue our ongoing conversations here on NOV Live International. As we continue our conversations today, we'll be talking about some innovative technology around water treatment or subsea water treatment, and that'll be coming up in just a little bit as we talk to Torbjorn Hegdal. So thanks for joining us on this session of NOV Live International, and we look forward to seeing you on our next session coming up just shortly. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you later.